these issues in my practice, but I also deal with them with folks that have questions. My background, I have a master's in industrial labor relations. I've worked with all three sides, management, union, and worked with arbitrators and mediators. So I'm very familiar with what this law does and doesn't do. We can hear a lot about the myths, and we can talk about those in detail. We can also talk about what this bill does and does not do. But let's be very, very clear. Chapter 4117, which is our collective bargaining law, does not disappear. It doesn't destroy collective bargaining. It does not touch private sector collective bargaining. It barely touches public sector collective bargaining in just a few aspects. Now, for those of you that are interested in the details of the law, specifically as a bullet points, curricular, and accurate Columbus Law Firm actually did a very, very good spreadsheet and lays everything out what the law does. And I can go through with some of those things with you in the question and answer session in a bit. First, I want to start with what labor really means in our country. The labor movement was originally designed to protect the worker. When we had labor and labor issues, children were working in factories, people were dying, losing limbs, and no one cared. And the labor movement was born. The same Gompers was one of the first presidents, or the first president of the AFL. And one of the things that he said that is relevant before we go into Senate Bill 5, it says, you cannot command one man in America to do anything. Under no circumstances can they say you must do so-and-so, or you must assist in doing so-and-so. So he actually understood the concept of what collective bargaining was for. It wasn't to tell the individual worker what he can and can't do. Collective bargaining evolved that way and became that way under the Warren Act. And Taft-Hartley was an attempt to kind of rein that back in a little bit, but it didn't really work. So when we're talking about public sector versus private sector, in Ohio and in many other states where we have a collective bargaining act, the balance is in favor of the unions and always has been. Whether you're on the union side or management side, you understand this. Unions collect money from payroll deductions from their employees for political action, political actions, but also for union dues. The employees have very little say in that. It goes straight into the union's coffers. And what happens is, as most people know, unions tend to favor one political party over the other. And it's regional, but by and large, they favor the Democrats, and that's fine. So when the Democrat gets in office, typically what ends up happening is that the endorsed candidate now becomes management, who actually is in a position where now my political contributors are wanting something from me. Now, by and large, that changes regionally, but that's really the issue there. So we're leveling the playing field with issue 2. Without issue 2, without Senate Bill 5, we've got really two choices when we're facing economic hardship. We either lay off our police and our fire and our essential services. That's our choice. I know the commissioner discussed furloughs, but really furloughs is just kicking the can down the road. It doesn't solve the underlying problem. You're asking people not to take pay, but it still doesn't solve the problem. And we'll get into that later during the Q&A. Or what we do is we ask for more taxpayer money. Sometimes, and in this case, we're going to be asking for one of the largest increases. So there's three main provisions in this bill that will actually save taxpayer money and increase the efficiency of this. Now, I'm a big advocate for home rule personally, and there's some things in this bill that I'm not a big fan of. And I'm going to be honest about that. And anybody who wants to read it, it's right here. It's about 300 pages. It's a big bill, okay? But I'll tell you this. Here's the drunk driving law. It's about 30 pages. I disagree with more of what's in here than I do with Senate Bill 5. In here, if you row down in a canoe and you have a beer, it's the same as driving down the center of I-75, drunk as a skunk. So there's some things in here that I don't agree with either. But no one likes sausage making, and politics tends to be a little bit of that. So first, you're going to limit state and local governments and make the health payments a maximum of 85%. So Mr. Pepper was running for state auditor, and if he would have won that election, he'd had a lot of employees in the state agency. So there, they have to contribute. Now, at the local level, they may not have to. So what the bill does is it asks both state and local to contribute the same amount. The other thing that it does is it eliminates step increases once a current contract expires. So what's going to happen is that the current contracts are going to continue. This isn't going to hurt the local worker at all. And when the new contract comes out, it's going to eliminate some of those things. And we'll talk about the details on that. And it eliminates the longevity pay. Essentially, what we're talking about is $1.5 billion, according to the Ohio Department of Administrative Services. This is going to say. We're asking people at the local level to pay what we pay privately, but more importantly, what their counterparts at the state level pay. Essentially, that's what it comes down to. It's $1.5 billion in savings. Politics aside. There's a lot of other details in this, and there's a lot of studies that went out. The Rutgers studies was one of them, but it only focused on pay. It didn't focus on benefits or compensation in the total package. There was a furlough study done, which you talked about. But in all reality, what we're talking about here is that there is an imbalance right now because of the economy and a lot of other factors. Public employees, on average, have about 31.2% higher total compensation, not just pay, but benefits, pension, everything. How many of you in here are getting Social Security or getting a pension right now? Now, during the course of your life, were you ever guaranteed a minimum rate of return of 8%? No. Whatever the market bears is what the market bears, unless you work for the state. So if your retirement account did 20%, you got to keep it. If it did negative 5%, that's what you got. In the government, you have a guaranteed 8% rate of return. And right now, I think I lost 10% last year. But my counterparts that work in state and local government got 8% return because I had to pay it, and so did everyone in this room. So there's some basic, simple, fundamental changes like that are occurring within this bill. So when you look at the details of the bill, you'll see that how it actually affects the compensation and how it affects the taxpayer burden makes a big difference and a big shift. Now there's a lot of myths out there, and I would agree with Mr. Becker that this isn't about balancing the budget. This is not about stimulating growth. This is not about the small business owner getting saved. It's not what this is about. And both sides, the political sides of these things, are going to be throwing advertisements and saying a lot of things that honestly is propaganda. Both sides. I'll be the first to admit that. But the reality is that Senate Bill 5, all it will do for us is prevent increasing taxes. That's what it's going to do. So issue 2 is a way of eliminating the tax increase that's inevitably going to come or the layoff of police and fire as it affects even our city. There's also the myth that public employees are overpaid. I think I touched on that the actual studies show that actual pay, the dollars that you get in your pocket, very true, it's about even public and private, but it's the benefits that matter. So that includes your retirement, that includes your health and medical. So for every $100 that a public employee makes, 87% on top of that, so $187 is what you're actually getting because your benefits. In the private sector, it's about $1.30, so about $137. Big difference, that gives you a total discrepancy of about 31%. So they're actually making a ton more money in benefits. It's not the things that you actually see. It's not your paycheck, but you're getting that guaranteed pension. You're getting that Cadillac health insurance. You're getting that employer contributions to your health. Now, I'm self-employed, always have been. I pay 100% of my health. I pay 100% of my dental. I pay 100% of my vision. I pay 100% of my retirement. And I don't get a guaranteed rate of return on anything. They do. So all we're asking is for time to let the public and the private sector close the gap, and that's what this bill does. It does not strip away collective bargaining rights at all. What it does is limit the types of things that can be negotiated for, and we can talk about the details on that as well. The Commissioner also discussed some of the political perception elements, and I think Senator Seitz is a friend of mine, and he quoted him as well. And Mr. Seitz does have some issues with the sausage-making approach to how this bill actually came about. But to be really fair, this thing has been in committee and been through hearings for over a year and a half. So it almost took 2 years to get all the information gathered before the bill hit the floor. And all the media took over on it. So this isn't something that was private. This isn't something that was hidden. This was a process. All bills in the State House are a process. Just because it hits the floor and the media grabs it doesn't mean that they didn't have hearing after hearing after hearing and testimony pieces after testimony pieces. In fact, Mr. Pepper actually testified and submitted written statements. So everybody had an opportunity to be heard. The back and forth, the politics of it, well, we see that in the national media too. Congress debating issues and fighting over things. It's politics, that's the way it is. And whoever's in charge of the Congress